Hey, everybody, Kevin here with Pursuing Pixels, and welcome back to another edition of Save It for the Cast. And as per usual, this week we got the whole crew here, John, Randall, and I, and I'm going to be kicking the ball over to the three of us in a few minutes here to chit-chat some video games and whatnot. John's been digging into some Warhammer 40k Boltgun per our pal Mikey, our bandmate Mikey's suggestion. And yeah, he's been digging into that, and we kind of end up veering off into all sorts of other video game chit-chat, some boomer shooter territory. I've been playing a little Post Void on Nintendo Switch, so we just kind of talk about some random like 90s era shooters and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, definitely some video game heavy chit-chat this week, but also as per usual, I'm going to talk about some of the stuff that I've been playing lately. I've actually been doing a ton of video gaming lately, both streaming and not streaming, just playing, some Switch runs of some stuff before bed. I did do a little bit of streaming. These couple, I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a rapid fire of some of the stuff that I've been playing here lately. But yeah, some of the games that I've been digging into big time on my Switch and that I won't spend a ton of time on because I've talked about them before on the podcast, but I'm back on my Kingdom Dead Lands specifically. They just released that new Kingdom 80s version, and I was just kind of scratching. I was like, it's not out on consoles yet. It's only out on Steam or maybe other places on PC as well, but I was like, I've done all my kingdoming on Switch so far, so I'm going to wait for that 80s version. I wasn't 100% sold on it, honestly, before it came out, but now I'm like, okay, I need to get my kingdom fixed, but I've been playing a bunch of Deadlands, kind of finally committing to trying to actually properly beat the game. I think when I've talked about it on the podcast in the past, like DJ and I, from the early days of the podcast, we used to play co-op a lot, and we'd just kind of have like slightly different ideas of how to approach it, and we'd always like, should we pick up where we left off? And I do this even with my own files too. Like, should I pick up right where I left off last time, or should I start a new one fresh and, try to correct my mistakes and do everything perfectly? This one, I'm kind of like, I'm actually on my third monarch, so it's like my third ruler. Like, I've let myself die a couple times in Kingdom 2 Crowns or the Deadlands DLC. You can actually like die and kind of pick up where you left off, sort of. You lose some of your progress, but yeah, I've been really enjoying playing that. And then the other game I've been playing a ton of that I've also talked about on the podcast before on my Switch. I didn't even know it came out on Switch, but I'm a huge fan of this developer, Wired Dream Studios. This game is called Undergrave. And again, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I've already talked about it before, but it's like a top-down, grid-based puzzle strategy roguelike, more arcadey in the like structure and whatnot, but I just really love, you're always, you start with a limited amount of action points, and you can either throw your sword, jump with your sword or without your sword, or dash with or without your sword. Once you throw the sword, all of the actions you have, obviously you can't throw the sword without it in your hand, but all of the other actions, jumping and dashing, now cost less, and then otherwise, whether you have the sword or not, if you're just moving one tile at a time, you're recovering action points. And there's a bunch of other layered mechanics in there, but it's just such an awesome game. And I think the game's like $12 or something like that on PC. For some reason, it's only $5 on Nintendo Switch full price. I happened to only come across it because it was on sale for even cheaper than that. It was like $3.75, and I was like, oh my God, I love this game on PC, and I just honestly just didn't play more of it because it was on PC. I tend to just gravitate towards my Switch when I'm playing games, so now that I have it on there, I've just been going nonstop, at least playing a run every night before bed, if not multiple, but just so hooked on that game, can't recommend it enough. And then I guess while I'm kind of in that Kingdom vein, another game that I've been playing a little bit of, and I really want to go back because there's been a couple updates since I played it first during a stream, but Tuttle Star Flower Harvest. This is a game, I might have even mentioned the Game Jam version called Howdy Boy Harvest. I'm a big fan of this developer. I know we've talked about Below the Ocean in the past, a really great puzzle platformer that was originally, a lot of their games were originally made for Game Jams, as was Howdy Boy Harvest. And the whole time I was like, this kind of reminds me of Kingdom, this like side-scrolling, like light layer of tower defense. And then they added with this Tuttle Starflower Harvest, which is basically just like a souped up version of the Game Jam release, a full commercial release of the game, I guess. But it's got this really awesome, like, it's not 1-bit because there's a ton of different colors, but just like a stark black background. Your character's just like all white pixels, if I recall correctly, other than maybe like your pitchfork. But they added in basically everything that I was talking about or thinking about while I was playing the game. Like, I wish you could have like a little bit of like tower defense action going on because enemies start coming in from the left and right. I think the arcade game I'm thinking of is Defender, where the screen, like, it's a shoot 'em up in that game, but like the screen or the map, you have a map at the top and it kind of like loops. Like if you just keep running to the right, it'll keep looping over and over again. And it works the same way here, at least best that I can tell. But you get all sorts of different upgrades. Like you can unlock a scythe that then allows you to, like, instead of your pitchfork, you can harvest things faster. You can get like a charge Mega Man blast kind of shot because you are fending off enemies as well. And there's just so many new things they added from the Game Jam version. And they've even added more since the initial launch, pardon me. So I'm really, really looking forward to playing some more of that one. I just love the sense of style, love everything about it. Also did a stream recently, the Game Maker, speaking of Game Jams, the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam for 2023 just wrapped up. That's always one of the biggest game jams of the year. It's even how I discovered game jams to the best of my knowledge that would even, found out what they were, whether it was either that or Ludum Dare. I can't remember, but those are definitely like the two big heavy hitters. And I did a stream, checked out like 7 or 8 different games, a bunch of the games from our pals. I'll try to just put a link to the full stream here in the episode description. But in particular, I really loved the game Crabjuice from our pals. There was a whole pretty big team on that one, but really cool kind of top-down arcade speed run sort of game, because once you get it down, you can get through it really quick, and it even gives you a timer. Like, you escaped in, I think my time was like 400 some seconds or 300. I think I was just under 400 actually, but you just play as like this little crab, I don't know, alien monster thing, and you just like launch yourself onto the other like security guards' heads, and there's a few different enemy types. Really cool. Like, again, the fact that this was made over the course of a weekend, the pixel art's amazing, the music's amazing. Again, they had a pretty decent sized team of really talented folks, so it's not a huge surprise, but still, I'm always blown away by what people can put together, especially with a big team in such a short amount of time. But there were quite a few others that I checked out that I really liked. So yeah, like I said, instead of just rambling here about a bunch of random games, I'll just try to put a link in the episode description here. And then one more game I did want to give a shout out to as well, that I played on a stream the other night, was a game that kind of caught me by surprise. It's called PLONG, and it's basically a Pong, breakout style game with a roguelike wrapping. And at first, like, when you boot it up, it's definitely got like a very like Windows 95, Windows 98 sort of aesthetic, but it was like, something about it felt a little bit janky at first. But once I got going and like because at first I was like, oh man, you got to control everything with the mouse or the cursor. And at first I was like, I tend to like to play with the gamepad, but with this game being pretty much strictly mouse controls, you can hold down, I think, spacebar if you want instead of click for one of the features. But basically you have like a cursor, like these two intersecting lines, a vertical and a horizontal line, and like where those two intersect is where your cursor is at. And then on any given stage, again, it's a roguelike kind of randomly generated stages, but you might have just one paddle. I think the very first one starts you off with just one paddle on the bottom or side. Again, it's like a square arena or rectangle maybe, but any stage you might be controlling all 4 paddles at once. So as you move your cursor to the left, that like crosshair intersection moves as well. And if you have a stage that sometimes there's only 3 paddles or 2, but if you have a stage that, let's say, has all 4 sides are paddles, and there's no walls that you can bank it off of or whatever, and you're like with that Windows 95 aesthetic, you're trying to like break all the files, and I think like, I don't know, decorrupt the virus. I can't remember exactly what the theming is, but you just have to hit like sometimes there's more than one, but just hit all the locks on a stage to unlock that folder and then move on to the next one. But I just really love like the theming, the progression, and then again, that like, not risk reward is not the right word. There's some cool upgrades that lean into the risk reward side of things, but I just really love that feeling of like, you really have to get down. Like, okay, first you get used to like, okay, I'm tracking the ball. Like, I think I'm going to hit it with the paddle on the left side of the screen. But then like at the last second, you're like, oh, it's actually going to hit that top paddle, but I haven't been moving that top paddle over to the side. Like, you just really have to constantly be aware of where that center of your cursor is and like where all the paddles are at all times. And again, you get like some power-ups. You start off with just like a bomb. So if you hold down the click, as the ball hits the paddle, it'll bounce off, and then the next thing it hits, it kind of blows them up. Even some of like the folders or files or, bricks, if you will, if we're talking like Breakout or Arkanoid, some of those will, even that you wouldn't be able to break otherwise, they might be like a solid rock or a like frozen tile that you can't break. But if you get the bomb, you can blow those right up and then clear a path. But it's just such a cool game. I went from being like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this one, to being like, oh, I could see myself playing a ton of this game. Just a really, really cool experience with a pretty unique control scheme. I mean, you're just moving a cursor around, but it just feels really fresh and unique. But a really cool take on the Pong Breakout, Arkanoid formula too. But I think I'll leave it there because I've obviously just been rambling on about some cool games here, but I'll leave it there and kick it over to John, Randall, and I for this week for the video game chit chat and whatnot. And otherwise, we'll catch you next week. And until then, take care. John, you want to...
Are we all recording?
I'm recording. I'm rolling, baby.
I'm now rolling, yes.
All right. Let me talk about Warhammer 40K Boltgun.
All right.
It's funny you mentioned that because I just drove by a Games Workshop the other day.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, man, I can't believe this place is still here. It's the same one that used to be, there 15 years ago over by the Best Buy that we used to work at, Randall, like kind of all the way around the corner. It was like on the furthest you can possibly get in that same shopping
Really? It was
center
like standalone? Because the Games Workshop I remember was in like Lakeside Mall, like in malls. I feel like there was more of those that I remember.
This was like, it was still like, it was standalone, like it was in a strip mall. So it wasn't like standalone in and of itself. But it was like on the end, like, you know how like there was that Office Max or Office Depot around like the backside? It was like, or that Chuck E. Cheese and whatever.
Yeah.
It was kind of like on that like very side entrance or whatever. But it's still there to this day. I remember going there and being disappointed and like, oh, they don't have video games. Oh, this place is lame. But anyways, not to sidetrack that, John, on the 40K.
Yeah. So Mikey got it, and like in the period where I was just like gushing nonstop, I think it only came out like a couple of days ago.
Okay.
But like in my gushing of Tears of the Kingdom to Mikey, like he was just started like gushing about Boltgun, and then he's like, John, this is my Tears of the Kingdom. he's like, everything that is like tailor made for you, like in a game that is so hyper specific geared towards your taste in games. He's like, Boltgun is that for me. And so I picked it up, and it like I had seen a little bit of it like in whenever they initially announced it. And it's part of their like handing the IP over to some indie devs to make like side games, like ones that aren't necessarily. Okay. So this one I think was I got it on sale for like $19.
Nice.
But it's like, it is very much I think we talked about it maybe last time we all like played games together. Where Mikey was describing it as like not a demake per se, but a very much like a just barely like over Doom or like a Quake era shooter. And like it's really low res graphics. There's even options to make the graphics even worse. Which is
does it run very high frame rate? Is it fast?
Oh yes, like every enemy has maybe 2 frames or 3 frames of like animation and like
lifting their arms and lowering them or something.
Yes, it's incredible, but it's like still in like a 3D with like good like controls. Like it feels really nice to control, and like I have like. But it's all very simple controls, like not a ton like of complexity or even like customization, even though it has a weapon wheel for 4 weapons.
Yeah, nice.
So, but like the gameplay switches a lot between weapons. So like if you're around like certain like demons from 40K, you're like, okay, these ones are just bullet sponges, so I need to take out the shotgun because otherwise I'm just gonna like be sitting here like taking their attacks. Or oh god, there's a lot of one hit like smaller enemies that I just need to like take out the machine gun to wipe out. Like it was the most like very like deliberate like chess-like situation equipment for me, not like Doom Eternal or like Doom 2016 where you're like just doing it so like on the fly and it feels really natural. This one was like very much like, all right, I need to like retreat and like assess the situation, like pull out the one weapon that I'm going to use for this entire room and then go into it. And like it's really fun. Like,
Sounds awesome.
Okay. I'm wondering, like, part of me is like, I wonder if they're doing that, like, to kind of add in like a layer of that strategy element as opposed to like just, you know, running and gunning and mowing stuff down. Like, let's inject a little 40K into here where you got to like juggle your weapons effectively.
Oh yeah, you're dealing
cool.
horde enemies versus like other like big hitting ones. So yeah, it feels like it sort of that they're a little bit more true to what their like actual units are or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Geez, this just released. Holy moly. Okay.
2 days ago, I think.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That doesn't seem like a Mikey game, but maybe I never talked to Mikey much about like retro older
shooters.
games and stuff like that. I feel like if he ever talks about older games, it's always like StarCraft, Warcraft type stuff.
Yeah.
The strategy stuff. So I never think of him as like kind of like an old, like, what do don't they call these like boomer shooters nowadays or whatever?
That's literally what it said on the Steam page.
Yeah. I've heard a few people say that. I'm like, that's pretty funny.
Like a 90s arena shooter, right? Is that basically, yeah.
Essentially, yeah. I've actually been playing a game. I just mentioned it briefly on the most recent Save It for the Cast. I picked it up on Switch. It's called Post Void. It's from the people who made that game Sea Salt that I raved about like ages ago.
Yeah.
But it's like a, you know, the fastest paced boomer shooter you can imagine. It's like a roguelike where you just got to clear like 11 floors as quickly as possible.
Nice.
And you just have this like what's it called? Like a vial or something in your hand that like just keeps draining your health at all times until you kill enemies to refill it. So it's all just like running and sliding and sprinting as fast as you can, and everything's just like not quite I was gonna say not quite as grotesque as Sea Salt, but definitely as grotesque as Sea Salt, but just like a different type of grotesque. But that game's been pretty fun. I'm kind of like are you playing with a controller on 40K?
Yeah. And like
okay.
I don't know. I think another thing that I really love about it is that it's very silly. And like because it feels like a Doom or like an air shooter or a Duke Nukem, where it's like like is so over the top, so unrealistic. Like everything is ridiculous. Like from the get-go, it is just like so like overtly silly that like I think it's very like effective. Like I think the thing that Mikey was saying was like how there's like one sound clip for all of like the human enemies in the game. Yep. So like no matter what context, like it works every time. It's the stupidest joke, but you've been going through an area where it's just been ambient music, and then you turn a corner and you just hear ah. And every time
like
I
the Wilhelm
laugh,
scream.
It's so good. It never stops being funny.
So this is like a strictly like single player campaign, or is it like is there a multiplayer aspect as well?
I don't think so, but like I'm still, and that's the other thing is that this is huge. Like I think my biggest complaint about it is that like I've gotten lost in basically every single level.
Oh, wow.
And like, I'm not sure. It's not like a corridor straight thing. Like you get to these little areas that are like a little bit more open-ended, and they are like the arenas where it's like, okay, this is the room where the next horde is. And then this is a corridor that leads to the next room. But like, they're very samey. And I think that's partially on purpose to keep like the theme consistent to like it being a retro game, but like it also like I spent like just 45 minutes in an empty level being like, I don't know where the exit is.
Oh man.
But like other than that, like it's really good. And like I don't know.
I love that they're I don't know who the studio was that developed it or whatever, but it kind of reminds me of like getting Warrock?
Auroch, AUROCH.
Okay, because I like the way you framed it, like as like kind of them kind of like not pawning it off to like indie studios, but for lack of a better term or whatever, like it kind of reminds me of like Tribute doing Turtles and stuff like that. Like these kind of big kind of name franchises or whatever, you know, that are IPs and getting, you know, letting like a smaller dev take a crack at it. Just like, hey, we like what you've done in the past. Like if you can pour that level of love into Turtles, we have full faith that you can get it done, you know?
This piques my interest
like
big
that.
time. I added it to my Xbox wish list because they dropped it on there too. So, I could go for a boomer shooter, I guess they're called these days.
Yeah, it's really good. And like the sound design, like the music is really good. And like I was playing with headphones, and there was like one power up that like really played with the stereo in it. And like as it was like when you started it, it was like really slow Doppler in the stereo, and then as it like was like getting lower and on the timer, it was speeding up. It was just, it felt incredible to play with headphones on.
Ooh. Yeah, playing games with headphones is just awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit when we get into Zelda, but when I did the stream, I did one stream of Zelda, and like playing that with headphones on, just like every little sound effect, I was just like, ooh, ooh, that's cool. Ooh, that's a nice sound.
That's what that sounds like.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to also just put it out into the ether, because now I think it's too good of an idea, and I want it to be made, and I'm hoping that like someone else who can make a game would pick it up, like, because Games Workshop is handing over their IP to these indie developers for them. Like, they've never made a Tyranid game, and Tyranids are like the big bad. They're the Zerg. They're the like just like hive mind, insectoid, reptilian,
the Borg,
whatever.
The Borg
like,
type.
Just to their entire like goal is just to consume all mass in the universe. Like, there's nothing else to them, and it's great. Yeah. But like, I really want like an isometric roguelike, like starring the Tyranids, where you start as like the smallest one, and like you like eat your way through some hordes until you die, and then you go to the bio reclamation pool and regenerate with all the biomass that you've consumed, and then you can become a stronger and stronger unit. And I'm like, oh my god, that would be so fun to do, but they'll never do it because they'll just keep making Space Marine games.
But it seems like there's a lot to pull from right there. You could easily pull a campaign out of that.
Yeah. It would just be
as soon as you said that, I'm like, they could just hire the people who made Into the Breach and just let them make some kind of, that kind of progression, but with that, structure that theme.
I like so many of these sub factions of Warhammer, and like Games Workshop is like, no, we're only making games starring the Imperium of Man and like no one else. So like, this sucks. They're the most boring like group in the entire thing. I was just gonna say, like, most of the Warhammer games I see, like, if I didn't know any better, I would just be like, oh, is this another like Gears of War, or is this another like just random FPS or third person shooter? Unless it's like Vermintide or something with like the rats. Yeah. Like, it's really funny when like this game or like Boltgun comes out, and it's just like it doesn't take itself seriously with the Imperium of Man. Like, there's a dedicated button where you just like yell out like phrases like "glory to the Emperor" or like "you will be purged in the name of..."
Love it. Yes.
It's like, it is so totally aware of how dumb it is, and I was like, this rules. Yeah. And then I'm like, please just give me all of the other weirdo factions. Give me an orc game, please.
Right.
Yeah, seems like a no-brainer. There's got to be fans of every faction, obviously. So it's like, why not? Yeah. Why not tap into that fandom?
Oh, yeah.
Especially if they can do it like stuff like this that's on I'm assuming, relatively lower budget than some of the other stuff that they've done. So
yeah, it doesn't have to be a giant Total War game. Like, just make a fun spin-off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Give me the Tau Mech game, please.
How many different factions are there in Warhammer?
Oh, at least 20.
Oh, I was gonna say like about a dozen, but dang.
And like, that's maybe including half of like the Space Marines themselves have like entire different chapters with different rules. So like,
right.
There's not just one Space Marine army. There's like multiple sub factions where you can only take certain equipment, but you get different bonuses and whatnot. Oh man. It's massive. It's a vehicle to make you spend money. Like, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, when I was into Magic cards, like, it was like, oh, I gotta have a deck of every kind just in case, of every type, and then I gotta have some more versatile decks. And it's like, it's literally me playing against my cousin, and we're usually like, here, you use one of my decks. Like, there's like 3 of us that play, you know.
Exactly.
Really, I'm pretty much just collecting these, like you said. I'm just buying them.
But it's fun to buy them.
It is fun.
It is.
Makes my brain make chemicals that make me happy.
Yes.
Yep. I mean, even when I'm playing like NBA Playgrounds 2, and I'm like unlocking new players. Oh, hey, it's Nowitzki on the
Marcus
Mavs.
Camby.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's like literally, I remember that name. And no real attachment to him other than like I paid attention to basketball back when he played.
Exactly.
Oh man,
what
speaking
isn't
of basketball,
about selling you nostalgia? Yes.
Yeah. So, these days, like even like commercials, like I've seen a lot of commercials these days that are like they're like callbacks to old commercials from that company. I'm like, oh my god, like
that's a little too snake eating its tail. For
I know.
Me.
Yeah, that's gross.
I know. Yeah.
God, I
not
keep
a fan.
seeing that N64 Switch Online like GoldenEye commercial, and it's like, hey, remember when you used to play? Like, it's like all of these people who are in their late 30s, early 40s, and they're like calling up their boys, and they're like, let's, even though we live across the nation, let's play GoldenEye. And I'm like, yikes.
Yeah. Did you see what they're adding to the not 64 but the Game Boy Advance catalog soon? I think at the end of the month they're adding all 3 of the other Super Mario Advance games, like Yoshi's Island, Mario 2, and Mario.
Basically the games that they have already, the originals.
Super Mario World. Yeah, like it's no real excitement there, but for whatever reason, I guess there's like those e-card bonus levels or whatever, assuming that those exist on the other games too.
I will say, that's how I first played both Super Mario World and Yoshi's Island, were those versions.
Same.
That's actually how I beat Yoshi's Island and how I beat Mario 2 as well, because I was like, there's like the extra like collectible coins, and then it just had like saving on it instead of leaving my NES on.
That was the killer for me. That's why I never beat any NES game, because I was like, I played it once at like either the dentist's office or someone's house, and then never again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things to say next to each other. Any NES. That's just such a great. I haven't played any NES game. I say it all the time, and I catch it. Like, that just has such a fun ring to it.
Yes.
Oh, man.
My orthodontist office had like a legit Sega Genesis kiosk thing with like a 5 or 6 game changer, and like, hey, it worked. It made me look forward to going to the orthodontist for however many years that was, through jaw widening and orthodontia.
And that ain't fun.
Yeah,
that ain't fun.
Yeah.
What were the games? Do you remember?
There was like Tasmania is not even that good of a Sega Genesis game, but it was definitely one of those, and it was fast. Okay. And it looked kind of like the cartoons. I definitely remember. Yeah,
it had good graphics. Yeah, definitely had good graphics.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, I don't have this game. I could play this for a moment. That's the one that sticks out in my memory.
Yeah. You know what game? I know I've been hyping up a lot of the Genesis games on recent episodes of the podcast and like on the selection there. But you know what game I fired up recently that does not hold up?
What's that?
Kid Chameleon. That game is just the wonkiest controls. Like, I was kind of excited to play it because like the character sprites kind of remind me of Ando's games or OSAT games, like Go Go Pogo Girl and Spirits. Like, it kind of reminds me, like, he's definitely a Sega guy. And is inspired by that stuff. So I was like, oh, maybe he's like a big Kid Chameleon fan, and like maybe this is like a sleeper hit that I never played much of, because I had it on like the Wii Virtual Console as well, but never played much of it.
Right.
And bought a cartridge of it, but it never worked. That was one of the few cartridges I ever bought and like could never get to work, whether I cleaned it. I got it to like boot the screen once for like a split second. But anyways, I played a little bit of that, and I was like, this game is trash.
Yeah.
Like, just absolute, like, terrible game.
That if I remember correctly, wasn't there some like Mario components to that? Like, you break blocks and stuff.
Yeah, you're like breaking blocks, but it's like, it feels even wonkier than like the Alex Kidd games that I've played, like control wise. And those games actually feel halfway decent, the Alex Kidd games, but
besides,
it's just like you like real
stuff,
heavy and weight. Yeah, the boss battle stuff in Alex Kidd is just a joke. Let's play rock paper scissors, like pure luck, like no
not great
strategy, no like tells from the bosses, no anything. Just pure luck, and then you lose a life if you lose.
Yep,
just a joke. But yeah, Kid Chameleon, not fun. I've still been chipping away at some Shinobi here and there, but
hell yeah,
Kid Chameleon. Yee.
I mean, I don't own that, and I love Sega Genesis, so there you go.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that you don't need to own it. I don't think.
Works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're going to complete a true like complete Genesis collection or like every first party game or something like that, then maybe. But yeah,
I do not need to.
I'm not living that life. The Game Jam just wrapped up over the weekend. So I've been I did one stream so far, played 15 of the entries. We got 50 entries on the dot again. So
nice.
Kind of funny how that like worked out. But yeah, so far there's been some really, really cool games. One of the games, there's like this, I don't know exactly what this platform is. They're called Wholesome Games. They have like a YouTube channel and a Twitter account. And like, they just kind of do these like wholesome directs, and they just do like kind of feature like, kind of like the Nintendo Directs, but just kind of feature like cozy, wholesome games and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And they featured one of the Jam games, actually, Therapy, it's called. It's like a deck building game about like tending to your plants and stuff like that.
Okay, no, like that sounds incredible.
It's a really cool game with really awesome art. Shoot. Like, I'm sure you've seen Fletch in the Discord.
I think so, yeah.
From time to time. I feel like they're one of the more active people in there. So if you saw their name, you'd be like, oh yeah, I recognize that avatar or whatever, the little duck.
Yes.
But him and like a team of like five other people. They worked on 2 different games last time, and they were just like, hey, we're all friends. Let's all work together on a game this time. And apparently they're like planning on making a full version. Like they already made like a Twitter account for the game, and like they're like going all in on it. I'm like, hell yeah, man. Like, just nice. It would be really cool to see another game come out of this jam as like a commercial release or whatever, even if it's not commercial, but just like a more fleshed out,
absolutely
version of it. Jetbox 2 was also made for the Game Jam. I don't know if you played a little bit of that, didn't you, John?
Maybe. I wouldn't know.
I feel like it was one of the ones you played for like a quick second. It was like that purple screen where you're like controlling a little, I guess, box with a jet booster on it, and you're just like collecting the particles on the screen, like the collectibles on the screen, and then your exhaust leaves like a trail that you can't touch that like kind of kills you, so you have to like kind of navigate the screen.
Yeah.
So the developer of that one like made a sequel to that essentially for the Game Jam, and like oh man, definitely some sweet entries once again.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Very pumped. I'm a little stressed because I'm like, man, I got to do a couple more streams this week. I still got to edit an episode of the podcast. So I'm like, shit, I shouldn't said I would try to stream everything, but whatever. I'll get done what I can get done. And
yeah,
it is what it is. Or if I have to do like a stream technically like after the voting ends or something like that, I can still check out some of the games after the fact. Maybe even check out some of the post-jam update stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been some sweet stuff.